Gentlemen, you realize if you're both speaking at the same time,
and it's too expensive.
Let the president. Go ahead, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better, and I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate. We guarantee pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is, and that destroyed. That they shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well? Or badly. Yeah. If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people, okay? I said, you got to run it so well.
That's what
and I just had a meeting with them. They said, the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive, premiums are too high, and it doesn't work. So we do want to get rid of it. Chris, we want to get rid of it.
I understand it, sir, but I have to give you roughly equal time.
Good.
Please let the vice president talk.
Good.
He has no plan for health care.
Of course we do.
He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising a health care plan since he got elected. He has none, like almost everything else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about.
All right, I have one final question for you,
sure.
Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
Are you going to pack the
court?
Make
sure you, in fact, let people know you're a senator.
Question.
I'm not going to answer the question
Why
because
you answer that
because
question?
The question is
radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
Who's
on your list?
Right. Gentlemen, I think
this
we've
is
ended
so
this.
He's going to pack the court.
We have
not going to give a list.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe.
They sure
47 years you've done nothing. They understand.
All right. The second subject is COVID-19, which is an awfully serious subject, so let's try to be serious about it. We have had more than 7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, and more than 200,000 people have died. Even after we produce a vaccine, experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything approaching normal. My question for both of you is, based on what you have said and done so far and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward? In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck. 200,000 dead. As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States. We, in fact, have 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, what did he do? He went in and we were insisting that the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job she was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan. I laid out
Sir,
back
it's
in
his 2
March
minutes.
exactly
So
what we
wrong.
should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools that cost a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So if we would have listened to
You have 2 minutes, sir.
if we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000, and one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at what we've done, I closed it, and you said he's xenophobic. He's a racist, and he's xenophobic because you didn't think I should
unrelated
have
to
closed
your
our country.
COVID.
No,
Wait
sir,
a minute.
It says 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said, President Trump saved thousands of lives. Many of your Democrat governors said, President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governors said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did. We got the gowns. We got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press. They give me bad press because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you
done.
didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was no
very-
economic recession.
Sir, you made a
There was far
there
less
was no
lethal
recession.
disease,
You made
by
a
the way.
point. Let him answer.
And there was we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he's shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak to them? You had a nurse holding a phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far
How
more
many
people.
That
Far
is-
more people.
And,
You would have been
and by the way,
months late.
your own,
You were
his
months behind me,
his
Joe.
own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up. He said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine. We're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all, nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You don't
we
trust
Dr.
Johnson
Fauci.
& Johnson, Pfizer?
And
Okay,
by the way,
gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future because you both have touched on two of the questions I'm going to ask. Focusing on the future first, President Trump, you have repeatedly either contradicted or been at odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your two words.
Yeah.
But Dr. Slaoui, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies, and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives. It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer. I've spoken to all of the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call
So
them
you're
left, I don't know
suggesting
what I
that the
call them.
head of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Slawi?
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available. Just like
He said
Dr.
it's a
Renzi.
possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also
I'm
be
talking about
after
when it's
that.
generally available. not
Well,
when
we're
it'll
going to
be.
deliver it right away. We have the military all set up logistically. They're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be
This is
delivering
the
the
same
vaccine.
man
It's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
by Easter this would be gone away. By the warm weather, it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. By the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the
That
same
was
man.
said sarcastically.
That was
you
him.
know that.
I
That was said
And
sarcastically.
so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up, though.
You'll have
on
the
that.
vaccine
I
sooner
want to
than
pick
that.
up on this question, though. You say the public can trust the scientists, but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight. Your running mate, Senator Harris, goes further, saying the public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked him. You pointed out. He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying you can't,
Everybody
or
knows.
Senator
And-
Harris is saying
no,
you can't trust the scientists.
No. You can trust the scientists. She didn't say that. You can't trust
She
the
said the public health
Did say
experts,
that.
quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed.
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. But there's millions of scientists, there's thousands of scientists out there, like here at this great hospital, that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. That's not, they're the people, and by
I
the way.
spoke to the
and
scientists
Fauci,
that are in charge.
By the way.
They will have the vaccine very soon.
Let him finish.
Do you believe for a moment what he's telling you in light of all the lies he's told you about the whole issue relating to COVID? He still hasn't even acknowledged that he knew this was happening, knew how dangerous it was going to be back in February, and he didn't even tell you. He's on record as saying it. He panicked or he just looked at the stock market, one of the two, because guess what? A lot of people died, and a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years you've done nothing.
Let's have this debate.
And if you would have had, let me just tell you something, Joe.
No,
If you would have had the charge of what I was put through, I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being built again.
See,
And it's
We're going to
going
get
up
to the
fast.
economy in the next segment, sir.
Okay.
It's going up fast. I look
Okay.
forward to talking.
When it comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different approaches, and this is going to affect how the virus is handled going forward by whichever of you ends up becoming the next president. I want to quickly go through several of those. Reopenings. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools. Why, sir?
Because he doesn't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to provide
that
them
to Nancy
plastic.
Pelosi.
Well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to Nancy Pelosi.
And
Schumer,
by the
try
way,
and Chuck.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with him in the Senate. And he sits on his golf course. I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably play
think
more than
about
I
it.
do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact
Well, he wants to shut down this country. And I want to keep it open. And we did a great
He just
thing by
admitted
shutting
he
it
shut
down.
it down.
Wait a minute,
Let
Joe.
him
Let me
finish,
shut
sir.
you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second. We want to. He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election on November 3rd. Because it's a political. But those states are not doing well that are shut down right now.
Respond to that.
President Trump, you have begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer, and in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
No, I think
the
masks
efficacy
are
of
okay.
masks?
You have to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to. But I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
Look, the way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open. We provided money.
But I was asking you, sir, about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, everybody wore masks in social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the opposite. They've also said
no serious person said the opposite.
Well, look
serious
at Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci said the opposite.
He did not say the opposite.
We got a little bit more than a minute left in this
masks
segment.
are not good. Then he changed his mind. He said masks are good. I'm okay with masks.
I want to ask you both about one last subject, because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people. Outside, yes, sir, agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with
nobody will show up.
People with
What's true? Nobody shows up to his rallies.
All right. In any case, why you holding the big rallies? Why you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
But are you not worried about it spreading
as a
disease?
president, and I'll have 25, 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you not worried about
we
the
have a lot of
disease
people. Well, so far we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference, according to the experts. And we do them outside. We have tremendous crowds, as you see. I mean, and literally on 24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
Okay.
By the way, did you see one of the last big rallies he had? And a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. That's what he said. I can't. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing in one another.
We've had no negative effect.
No negative effect.
We've had no negative effect. And we've had 35, 40,000 people
you want
at these rallies.
just quickly finish up, because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing and people wearing masks, basically encouraged them not to.
All right.
He's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy?
Yes.
The economy is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown.
Much faster.
In the second quarter, the unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape. What difference does that mean to the American people in terms of the economy? President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was very hard psychologically to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong. And again, 2 million people would be dead now. Instead of still 204,000 people is too much. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening in some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance. They can wash their hands. They can wear masks. They can do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up. When you look at North Carolina, when you look, and these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others, you got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost, it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce, look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well, setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
All right, your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery. What's the difference?
The difference is millionaires and billionaires like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how old are you doing? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, wait, no. Sir, it's just 2 minutes. Yeah, I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying. People who've been putting themselves in the way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools, why are schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right. Your time is up, sir. We are going to get to...
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools, people want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York, it's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not sure it can ever recover what they've done in New York. People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives. They'll be careful, but they want their schools open. I'm the one that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And
all right,
people of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know
we're going to get back,
gentlemen,
we're going to get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers. I paid $38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million.
Show us your tax returns.
I went. You'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under-leveraged because the assets are extremely good, and we have a very, I built a
Sir,
great
I'm asking
company.
you a specific question, which is...
But let me tell you...
I understand all of that.
Release your
I
tax
understand
return.
all of that.
But let me...
No, Mr. President,
Go ahead.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So
yes.
not 750?
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it. And
you'll
get to see
when?
it. But let me just
Inshallah?
tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We build the building and we get tax credits, like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired right after that happened. But
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher on the money a school teacher makes, is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And we're going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't
Why didn't you
president.
do it over
Because
the
you
last
weren't
25
president
years?
screwing things up.
You were a senator.
You're the
and
worst
you were a
president
vice-
America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe, I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of doing, including fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of your vets.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward, because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what the analysis done by Wall Street firms. Points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth, because it would be about buying America. That we're going to make, the federal government spends $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500, who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it before when you were vice president with Obama?
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your tax proposal.
I got it done. And you know what happened?
Yeah, you got it done.
Our economy boomed like it's never boomed.
The economy is busted.
Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for American people.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. but they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market.
La más lenta
When the stock
recuperación del
market goes
mercado.
up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you
Están hablando
ever
de
became
401ks,
president with
¿qué
your ideas, you
significan
want to terminate my taxes,
pensiones?
I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty
Half
of
of the
companies that are
companies,
already here, they'll leave for
hardly any
other
companies
places.
have
They will
poured in
leave,
here.
and you will have a
Have it.
depression, the likes of which
Que muchos
you've
empresas
never
se van a
seen.
ir
Look,
de
we
país
inherited
si siguen, si
the
seguimos con
worst
ciertas-
recession short of a depression in
ciertas
American
leyes.
history. I was asked to bring it back.
La mejor
We were
la
able to
peor
have an
depresión
economic
de la
recovery
historia
that created the
de
jobs
Estados
you're
Unidos.
talking about. We handed him a booming economy.
Nosotros le
He
entregamos
blew it.
una
It wasn't
He
economía
blew
booming.
it. He
It
blew
wasn't
it.
y él
booming. It
acabó
was the
de esa-
weakest
Well,
recovery
sir, is it
since
fair to,
Era
wait, is
la-
it fair to,
la
is it
más,
fair to say he blew it when,
la más-
in
When
fact,
COVID
it was
came.
La más
when there
lenta
was record
recuperación.
low unemployment
Yeah.
before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing
Estaba
went in the
diciendo que
hole.
Trump tenía
Manufacturing
la
went in the
menor-
hole.
Excuse
Number
me,
one.
Chris,
menor
wait.
Number
desempleo.
two.
Chris,
Number
todo
three.
el
They
tiempo.
said it would take, no, you're a number two.
No.
Chris, they said it would
This
take a
guy,
miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing.
We
Part
did
of my
not agree.
standard fare.
I'm the guy
He
that brought
totally
back
gave
the
up on
automobile
manufacturing.
All right, let him.
We brought back,
Que
I was asked to
manufactura
bring
Trump
back
apoyaba mucho y
Chrysler and
Biden
General
no.
Motors. We brought them
Ese
back right here in the
tenía
state of
preferencia
Ohio
por
and
mucho.
Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going
Ohio
after-
had the best year it's ever
Ohio
had
tenía
last
el
year.
mejor
Michigan
año.
had the best
Michigan
year they've
tenía el
ever
mejor
had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies
No.
came in from
Muchas
Germany,
compañías
from
de-
Japan,
de
went to
autos
Michigan, went to
fueron a
Ohio.
Michigan que
And they
estaban-
didn't come
Wait,
in
wait,
with you.
Mr. Vice
estaban
President, go ahead.
And so
Alemania y
you
otros
take a
países
look at what
volvieron
he's
otra vez
actually
a Estados
done.
Unidos.
He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit
China
with
ate
Mexico.
your lunch, down
All right, gentlemen,
18%.
in-
China ate your lunch, Joe, and no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars. Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity,
¿Por qué?
the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million?
That's
What
not
did he
true.
do to deserve it?
That
What
is
did he do with Burisma
none
to
of that-
deserve
Wait, wait,
$183,000?
None
You've
of
asked
that
a
is
question,
true.
let him answer.
None of that is true. It's
Oh, really?
been
He
totally,
didn't
But
do
no,
$3.5
hey,
million?
Mr. President,
It's
Mr.
totally-
President, please.
totally
You've asked the question.
El
discredited.
alcalde
Totally
de
discredited.
Moscú,
And by
de la
the way,
esposa
Well, wait, he
let's talk-
didn't
de la
get $3.5
esposa
million,
de
Joe?
Moscú,
Mr. Vice
del-
got
de la-
$3.5
President,
million.
el alcalde de
that
la-
is not true.
Oh,
Here's-
really?
el
Mr.
esposo del
President,
alcalde de Moscú le
it's
dio
an
millones de
open
dólares al hijo
discussion.
de Biden.
Please,
Now,
It's a fact.
Well,
There's- it
you
is
have
not a
raised an
fact.
issue. Let the
It's been
Vice
totally
President answer.
discredited.
Did
There was a
Burisma pay him
report.
$183,000 a month with no experience in energy?
Mr.
Look,
President,
no
my
job?
son did nothing wrong.
Mi
at
hijo no ha
Burisma.
hecho
I think
nada
he
malo,
did.
dice.
Mr. President,
guy-
Me dice,
let him
sí, yo
answer.
creo que sí, usted ha hecho-
He
sí,
doesn't
ha
want
hecho
to let me
algo
answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
who?
And you
The
can-
media?
By everybody. Well, by the
By the
media,
media,
by our
because they refuse to
allies,
talk
by the
about it
World
because they're
Bank, by,
embarrassed.
En los medios de comunicación no hablan de
by
Joe Biden.
everyone has discredited. Matter of fact, even
Mr.
the people
President,
who
please stop.
testified
Que lo que
under
dijo no ha
oath.
sido descreditado.
So let me ask you this, Joe.
Under
No,
oath.
go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to
Even the
you.
people under.
He got $3.5
he
million from
testified-
Moscow.
he
Tres
testified under
millones y
oath in
medio
his
de dólares
administration.
de
Said,
Moscú.
I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh,
I
really?
did it
I'd like to know who
honorably.
they
3
are.
millones y medio tenía
Well,
el
I'll
hijo
give you
de
the
Biden.
list of the
I'll
people who
find
testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't
well,
do a good
here's
job. With you,
Go
they
ahead.
say,
You get
here's the
the, wait a
deal.
minute. You get the final word, Mr.
well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me. This,
Hey,
Que no
let me
puedo-
just say to
que
you,
no
No,
puedo-
no,
que no
Mr.
puedo decir
President,
nada
$3.5
Mr.
million,
President.
Joe.
that is simply
Why did he
not true.
deserve $3.5 million from
Porque
Moscow?
su hijo merecía
Here's the
3
deal.
millones y medio
We want to talk
de Moscú.
about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's
My
already.
family,
No, let him go.
my
Hablemos
family
de su
lost
familia,
a
ladies.
fortune by coming down and helping
Go
us
ahead.
with
Go
government.
ahead, sir.
And that's such a.
they're right
that's
here.
a-
Mr.
That's such
Every
a great.
single one of them lost
This
a
is not
fortune
about
by
President.
my
coming and
family or
helping
his
us with
family. It's
government.
about your family,
They
the
didn't
American
collect
people.
$3.5 million
He
for
doesn't.
nothing.
That's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about
you
here.
should
All right, that's
Not
the end
about
of
here.
that's the end of the
Shouldn't have
segment.
taken the money.
We're moving on.
It didn't
En el
take that.
siguiente
Vice
se
President,
quedaron hablando
no,
ustedes
Can I be
de lo
honest?
que
It's a
dijo
very
Biden.
important
Try to be
question.
No,
honest.
I
He
He
stood
Me
up.
parece por,
No,
He stood up
the answer to
por-
the
and he
question is
threatened
no.
por China
Ukraine
y
No,
por Rusia.
sir.
with $1 billion if you
That
get rid of
is
the
you know what, you're-
absolutely
wait,
not
stop.
You're on
true.
tape doing it.
You're going to
Not
have
true.
Gentlemen,
Is-
I hate to raise
Chris,
my voice, but
he's
it
on
seems
tape.
to be, why should I be different than the two of you? So here's the
Got a
deal.
good point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more interrupting.
Oh, that's
than
all
he
right,
has.
but he does plenty.
Well, less than, sir, less
there's
than,
plenty.
no, less than you have. Let's please continue on. The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response
La
to the
respuesta del
violence
presidente
in
Trump.
Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides,
Están hablando
was
de
what
lo que pasó en
directly led
Charlottesville con
you
personas
to launch
de la
this run
ultraderecha.
for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for black Americans than any
Trump ha
president, with
hecho
the
más
possible
por,
exception of
los
Abraham Lincoln. My
afroamericanos.
question for the two of you is, why should voters trust
Porque
you rather
los
than your
votantes deberían
opponent
creerle
to
usted
deal with the
en vez
race
de
issues facing
al,
this country
a su
over the next
oponente,
4 years?
teniendo en cuenta
Vice
los
President
problemas,
Biden, you go first.
Los
It's about
problemas
equity,
raciales que hay en Estados
equality.
Unidos.
It's about decency.
Se trata
It's
de
about the
igualdad,
Constitution.
se trata de
And we have
decencia.
never walked away from
Nunca
trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the
Nos hemos
whole
alejado de la
America.
igualdad.
But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides.
Y que Trump dijo
No
que
president's ever
había
said
unas
anything
muy
like
buenas
that.
personas en ambas
It is,
partes.
Now,
Sabiendo que
second point I'd
que
make to
eso no fue
you is
verdad.
that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful
Trump sí
protest in
habló
front of the White House.
de
What did he do? He came
no
out
estaba
of
de
his
acuerdo
bunker,
con
had the
los
military
marchantes de
use
Ku
tear
Klux
gas
Klan
on them so he
o
could
los
walk
marchantes de
across
Israel.
to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is the savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African American community.
So,
President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans
¿Por
trust
qué los
you
americanos deberían
over
confiar en
your
usted
opponent to
sobre?
deal with
he did a
racism?
crime bill,
Bueno, el
1994.
crime bill. Él hizo
where
el
you call
crime
them
bill.
super
Biden
predators, African
hizo el crime bill y le dijo super predadores a los afroamericanos.
They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, no, sir,
ellos
it's
no
just 2
lo
minutes.
So
van a
you
olvidar.
did that, and they called
Usted
you
hizo
super
eso.
predator,
Y
and
usted les
I'm
dijo
letting
super
people out of
predadores a
jail
los
now that
afroamericanos.
you have treated the
Y los
African
ha
American
tratado
population
a la
community,
población
you have treated the
afroamericana.
black
Los ha
community
tratado
about as bad as
tan
anybody in
malo
this country. You did the
como a
1990, and that's
cualquiera en
why,
este país.
if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time because they saw what you did.
Ellos
You
vieron lo
called
que usted
them
hizo.
super
Usted les
predators,
dijo
and you've
super
called them
predadores.
worse than that
Y les ha
because
hecho
you
peor
look back
que
at your
eso.
testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as
Les
the
ha hecho
church is
peor que eso.
concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals.
Hemos tenido
Total
el apoyo de
support. Law
250
enforcement,
más de
almost
250
every law
líderes
enforcement
militares.
group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas,
Tengo Florida,
I
tengo
have
Texas,
Ohio,
tengo Ohio,
I have excuse me, Portland, the sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those
¿Por qué no
words,
está
Joe?
diciendo
Why
esas
don't you say
palabras?
the words law enforcement?
¿Por qué
Because
no dice
you know what? If
law
they called
enforcement?
us in Portland,
¿Por
we
qué no
would
habla
put
de la
out that
policía?
fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you
Usted
look
Chicago.
at any place you want to
Usted
look,
ve
Seattle,
cualquier
they
parte,
heard we were
Seattle.
coming in the following day and they put up their hands and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis,
Está
we got
hablando
it back, Joe, because
del apoyo
we
de la
believe in law
policía
and
del
order,
cual
but you don't.
Biden no está
The
hablando.
top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases
Donde hubo
radical
más
left. And they've
desmanes
got you wrapped around their finger,
fueron
Joe,
en
to a point where
ciudades
you don't
demócratas.
want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what,
Usted no quiere
the
hablar de
people of this
ley y
country
orden.
want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I
Usted
want
le
to
da
return to
miedo
the
decirle
question
orden,
of race.
precisamente porque va a
Vice
perder los
President Biden,
votantes
after the grand jury in
de
the
la izquierda.
Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there is. There's systemic injustice in this
Una
country.
injusticia
In education,
sistémica.
work,
Claro, porque
and
usted apoyó el crime bill,
law
Biden. Biden
enforcement,
apoyó el crime
and the
bill.
way in
Eso
which
fue lo
it's
que se tiró toda
enforced.
la comunidad
But
negra.
look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way,
Está
violence in
diciendo como
response is never appropriate.
que las
Never
personas
appropriate.
deberían,
Peaceful protest is.
deberían haber
Violence is
sido
never appropriate.
pues, tomadas por la ley
When they
sí,
run through the
deberían
middle of
apagar
town
sus
President
crímenes,
Trump,
burn
pues,
down your
refiriéndose
stores and kill people
a lo que
all over
ocurría
the
con la
place.
comunidad
That is
afroamericana.
peaceful.
President
No,
Trump,
it's
I'm not
not, but
asking-
you say it is.
President
did not
Trump, I'd
say
like to continue with the
Yes,
issue
go
of
ahead,
race. I
please.
promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to
teoría
do that, to end racial sensitivity training?
teoría
And do you
sobre el
believe that there is
racismo. ¿Usted cree
systemic
que hay
racism in this country?
un racismo
I ended
sistémico
it
en
because
este
it's
país?
racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were
Muchas
asked to do
personas
things
estaban
that were
quejando
absolutely insane, that
de
it
que le
was
están
a
exigiendo
radical
cosas
revolution that was taking place in our
rarísimas, locas.
military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody
what
else.
is radical,
And he would know.
What is
Oh, it was
radical
totally
about
racist.
racial
Pues le están
sensitivity
pidiendo a la
training?
gente que
If
se
you were
agache,
a
que
certain
se ponga
person,
de rodillas
you had no status in life. It was sort of a
para acabar
reversal.
con el
And if
racismo,
you
cosa
look at the
que es
people,
algo
we would pay
absurdo.
people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very
Están
bad ideas
le
and
están
frankly
pagando
very
a
sick
la
ideas.
gente, a los
And
docentes,
really, they were
$1 millón
teaching
de dólares
people
para
to
que le
hate our
enseñe a la
country.
gente
And
a
I'm not going to
odiar a
do
la
that.
gente
I'm
y
not going
no
to
voy
allow
a
that to
permitir eso.
happen.
Y es lo mismo que está
We
pasando
have
acá
to
con
go
FECODE,
back to the core
con
values
las
of this
universidades
country.
públicas
They
como
were
la nacional.
teaching people that our country is a horrible place,
Le
it's
están
a
diciendo a la gente
racist
que
place,
Estados Unidos
and
es
they
un
were
lugar horrible,
teaching
que es un
people to
lugar
hate our country. And
racista,
I'm not
que
going to
es
allow
y
that to
quieren que
happen.
odie a la
President
misma
Biden.
gente interna de Estados
Nobody's
Unidos.
doing that. He's
Oh,
the
you-
racist.
you just-
Él es el
Here's the
racista,
deal.
ese es
I know a
Biden.
lot more about
You
this
don't
than he
know.
does.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults
no
them,
es,
what is
sensible,
demeaning to them. It's
no es
important that people know
sensible
they don't want to.
racialmente,
Many
le
people don't
dice
want to
Trump.
hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference.
Hace
It
una
makes
gran
a
diferencia.
gigantic difference
Es
in the
una
way a
gran
child
diferencia.
is
La
able to
forma en
grow
la
up
que
and have a
un niño
sense of
crece
self-esteem.
y tiene
It's a
una
little bit
y tiene
like how
autoestima.
this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look
Que
down on
miran,
people
que
who
miran
don't have
mal
money. They
a,
look down
a
on
los
people who
irlandeses
are of a different faith. They
o a
look
las
down on
personas que
people
tienen
who
otra
are a
fe.
different color. In fact, We're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring
La
this
única
country
forma que
together
podemos
is
tener
bring
es
everybody
unir este
together. There's
país
nothing
es
we
que
cannot
es,
do if we do it
es uniendo
together.
a las
We
personas.
can take this on and we can defeat
Podemos,
racism in
podemos
America.
President Trump, sir.
vencer el
During the
racismo si estamos
Obama
unidos, dice
Biden
Biden.
administration, there was tremendous
Durante
division.
el tiempo de
There was
Obama hubo
hatred.
una
You look
tremenda
at
división.
Ferguson, you look at
Estuvo lo
you
de
go to
Ferguson,
many places. Look at
en muchos
Oakland. Look what
lugares. Vean
happened
lo que
in
pasó en
Oakland. Look what
Oakland.
happened in
Vean lo que
Baltimore.
pasó
Look
en
what happened.
Baltimore.
Frankly, it was more violent than what
Francamente
I'm
era
even
más
seeing now.
violento de lo
But
que
the
hemos visto ahora,
reason
pero la
is
razón,
that the
pero
Democrats
la
that
razón es
run
que
these
los
cities
demócratas que
don't want
corren
to talk
estas
like
ciudades
you
no
about
quieren
law
hablar
and
de
order.
lo que usted,
Violent
You still
crime,
haven't
como
mentioned.
usted no
Are
quiere
you in
hablar de
favor
ley
of
y
law
orden.
and order?
I'm in
Usted
favor of
está de
law.
acuerdo
You
con ley
follow
y
Are you
orden.
in favor of law and
¿Está
order?
usted
Go
de
ahead, say
acuerdo
it.
con
You asked a question,
la
let him
ley y
finish.
el
Law
orden?
and
Sí,
order.
acaba de
Law and order.
Let him answer.
Law and order with justice,
La
where
ley y el
people get
orden.
treated fairly. And the fact of the matter is, violent
El
crime
hecho es
went
que la
down
ley y el orden debería estar,
17%,
debería existir
15% in our administration. It's gone up on his watch.
para todos,
He-
pues, para que
more.
eso
he
actúe
has-
All right, we're
he
not,
is
you're,
president
of
Mr.
the
President,
United
you're
La
going
States of
to,
raza.
China, we
Mr.
were
President,
breaking every record in the
Mr.
book.
President, you're going to be very happy because
And
we're now going to
excuse
talk
me,
about law and order.
places we had
Vamos a
trouble
hablar
were
de ley y
Democratic-run cities.
Que
That's
los
exactly
desmanes
my
que están
question. There
pasando
has been a
están
dramatic
ocurriendo
increase
es
in
en
homicides in
ciudades
America this summer
demócratas.
particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and
Usted
Democratic
está
governors, but in
culpando
fact
a
there have been
gobernadores y a
equivalent
alcaldes
spikes
demócratas.
in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can
Que
bring
si
in
esto
a
es un
couple of
problema
examples, but if you
de,
look at
que si
Chicago,
esto es un
what's going
problema
on in
de,
Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot.
esto es un
If
problema
you look
de
at New York,
demócratas
where it's
y
going up like
republicanos.
nobody's ever seen anything. The
Es-
numbers are going up
está en Nueva
100,
York.
150, 200%. Crime.
Que el
It's
crimen ha
it's
subido más
crazy
del
what's going on.
200%.
And he doesn't want to
Es
say law and order
loco
because
lo
he
que está
can't,
pasando.
because he'll lose his radical
Que
left
no puede
supporters.
hablar de
And
ley
once he
y
does
orden
that,
porque
it's
va a
over
perder
with.
a
But
sus seguidores.
if he ever got to run this country
Si él
and they ran it the way
intenta,
he would want to run it, we would
co-
have our
manejar
suburbs
este
would be
país.
gone. By the way,
Suburbs.
our suburbs would be
Nuestros
gone.
suburbios
And you
se
would
van
see
a
problems
acabar
like
y
you've
se van a
never
ver
He would know a
problemas como
suburb
nunca
unless he
han
took a
visto
wrong
antes.
turn.
Oh, I know
He
suburbs
would
so
not.
much
I was,
better.
Yo conozco los
Doug,
suburbios
wait a minute.
muy
I
bien.
was
dice.
raised in the suburbs. This is
Yo
not
fui criado en los
1950.
suburbios, dice
All these
Biden.
dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by
Los
and large
suburbios
integrated. There's many people
ya están
today driving
integrados.
their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is
Está
a
hablando de
threat
que no
to the
hay
suburbs and their safety is his
división
failure to deal with
racial en los
COVID. They're
suburbios.
dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment.
Es
They're being
diciendo, está
flooded.
fallando con el
They're
COVID,
being
está
burned
fallando
out
con
because
el
his
clima.
refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do
Por
want to
eso es
talk
que los
about this
suburbios
issue of
están en
law and order,
problemas.
though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you
En la
talked
task
about,
force de Biden
quote,
y Bernie.
reimagining policing. First of all, what does
Que es
reimagining policing mean?
reimaginarse
And
la,
do you support...
la policía, que es lo
if I
mismo
might
que
finish
pasa
the
acá,
question, what does
de
reimagining policing mean?
modificar la
And do you
policía,
support the
modificar
Black
lo que está
Lives
ocurriendo con la
Matter
policía.
call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police
Cuando
having the
apoyo
opportunity
esto,
to deal with the problems they face. And
la
I'm
policía tiene la
totally
oportunidad de
opposed
manejar
to
los problemas
defunding
de
the
ahorita.
police offices. As a matter of fact, local police, the
La
only one
policía,
defunding in his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance.
que es
They need
Trump el que
more
quiere
assistance. They
cortar la
need, when they
policía.
show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before,
Tenemos
where the officers
que
get to know the
manejar
people
la
in the
policía según
communities.
la
That's when
comunidad.
crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what
in
they're
preven-
talking about,
That's-
Chris. That's
well,
not what
that-
they're
that's
He's talking
exactly-
about defunding
Está hablando,
That is
ellos están
not
hablando
true.
de
He doesn't have
quitarle,
any law
Well,
de
look,
He has
quitarle
no law
fondos a la
enforcement
That's not
policía.
true.
almost
That's
Eso es lo que,
not-
lo que han
Really? Who
estado
do you have?
diciendo los
Name one
movimientos de
group that
izquierda.
supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go
Look,
ahead.
look.
Think. We have time.
We don't have time to do
No,
anything.
think
except
about
listen.
it.
Look,
Name
folks,
one law
folks,
enforcement
Nombre
group that came
I
out
think,
and
I think,
supported
gentlemen,
you.
I think I'm going to
Nombre
take
una,
back the mic.
I don't think you know
And I want to get to another
algún
subject,
grupo
which is
policial
the
que
issue
está
of
apoyando a Biden,
protests
eso es
in many
cierto, nadie está
cities
apoyando a
that
Biden
have
y
turned
sí hay varios
violent. In
grupos
Portland,
policiales que están
Oregon,
apoyando a
especially,
Donald
we
Trump.
had more than 100 straight days of protests,
Más de
which I think you
100,
would agree, you talk about peaceful
más de
protests,
100 días
many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President,
de protestas
say that
que
people who
no
commit
eran
crimes
pacíficas.
should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is
pregunta
as
que
the
tengo es,
Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right
usted dice
now.
que usted es
Have you ever called the
el Partido
Democratic mayor of
Demócrata.
Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the
Usted
National
le ha
Guard,
dicho
do whatever it
a
takes,
los
but you
alcaldes
stop the
demócratas,
days and
oiga, pare
months
lo
of
que está
violence
pasando,
in
pare
Portland.
la violencia que
I
está
don't
pasando en
hold
su
public
ciudad. ¿Le ha
office.
dicho eso a los alcaldes
I am
demócratas?
a former vice president. I've made it clear. I've made it clear in my
He
public
dejado
statements
claro
that the violence should be
que la
prosecuted.
violencia
It should be
debería,
prosecuted. And anyone who
debería
commits
ser
it
But you've never
is
called for the people,
He's never
the
said that.
leader, excuse me, sir. You
tomada
have
pues
never
por la ley
called for the leaders in
prosecuted.
Portland and in Oregon to call it,
Because
bring in
they-
the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact,
Ellos
take care of
pueden
it if he just stay
tom-
out of the way. Look here.
Ellos
Oh,
pueden
really?
encargarse
Oh, really?
de los
Here's what
problemas
No,
I
that-
sent
sir,
in
no,
the
wait, I
U.S.
asked
solos
you
por
a
su
question.
cuenta,
the
dice
killer
él.
of the young man in the middle of the street. They shot him, and for 3 days,
President Trump,
Donald
Trump
President
está
Trump,
hablando de un
I
hecho
had
que
to
pasó
send
donde
in the
mataron a
U.S.
una mujer.
Marshals. They
President
took
Trump,
care of business.
go ahead, sir.
And by the way,
En donde Biden
his own
dice
former
que
spokesperson
cada
said,
alcalde se puede encargar de su propia ciudad,
riots and
sabiendo
chaos
que
and violence help
en
his
este
cause.
caso
That's what this is all about.
estaban, no le permitían a la policía participar y estaban permitiendo
Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think
que los
so.
marchantes salieran a
And so
destruir
here's the,
All right.
lo
but
poco
here's the
que queda de la
point.
economía
The point is
de la
that
ciudad.
that's what he is keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying,
En vez
let's
de
get
salir a
everybody
hablar con la
together,
gente
figure out
y
how to deal
unámonos
with this.
juntos,
What
porque
does he
Biden,
do?
Trump
He
no
just
hace
pours
eso.
gasoline in the fire.
Él
Constantly.
solamente
And
le echa
every
gasolina al
single
fuego.
solitary
Okay,
time.
and to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir.
Un
You have
minuto para
repeatedly
responder.
Wait, I
criticized.
have to answer his
No,
statement.
you have
His statement.
repeatedly,
Wait,
you have
just
repeatedly,
Usted
you've been talking
repetidamente-
back
Made
and
a
forth.
statement.
I'm asking you.
I would love to
you know,
end it.
sir.
I would love to end it, and
you
we
know, if
would
you want to
very-
switch seats,
We would very quickly.
We could do that, but
I'd
I'm
send
no.
in the
I'm,
Están
National
hablando
Guard,
uno
it would
sobre
be
el otro.
over. There'd be no problem.
Okay,
But they
good.
don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized
Ellos no aceptan la Guardia
the
Nacional,
Vice
sí,
President
cosa
for
que
not
se
specifically
les
calling
ha,
out Antifa
se les ha
and
ofrecido
other
la ayuda
left-wing
de la
extremist
Guardia
groups.
Nacional teniendo en cuenta
But
los
are you
desmanes que
willing
están ocurriendo, no lo
tonight
aceptan.
to condemn white supremacists and
Que
militia
quiero que
groups
condene
and to
los
say
supremacistas
that they
blancos
need to stand
y
down
que
and
ellos
not
necesitan
add to the violence
y
in a
que ellos
number of
tienen
these
que
cities, as we saw
alejarse de
in
los problemas y
Kenosha
no
and as we've seen in Portland.
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared
to
to
do that.
teniendo en cuenta lo que
specifically
pasó en
do
Kenosha.
it?
I
Go
would
ahead,
say,
sir.
I would
Y en
say
otros sitios.
almost everything I see is
Todo
from
lo
the
que veo
left
es de la
wing,
izquierda
not
y
from the
sí,
right
todo
wing.
lo que está ocurriendo de la
What are
ley
you
más,
saying?
I'm willing
todo
to
lo que
do
está
anything
ocurriendo
I
de los
want to see.
marchantes
Well, then do
antifa
it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
y dice
You wanna call
que
them-
juzgue a
What do
los
you wanna call them? Give me a name. Give me a
las
name.
personas
Go ahead.
de
What would you like me to condemn?
white supremacists and right
Proud
wing
Boys,
los racistas
stand
blancos,
back
sabiendo
and
que ellos
stand
no
by,
han
but
salido a
I'll tell you
marchar
what,
en
I'll
ninguna
tell you
ocasión.
what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left
Alguien tiene que
because
hacer
this is
algo
not a
frente a
right-wing
Antifa
problem.
y
This is
frente
a
a la
left
izquierda.
FBI director
This
said
is a
the threat-
left-wing
Go ahead.
problem.
Esto es un problema de la izquierda.
Antifa is an idea, not
Antifa es
an
una idea, no una organización. No me hable mierda, Biden.
It's an
cabrón.
FBI.
Es una idea, hijo.
FBI director
Gentlemen,
No me hable
Well, then you
mierda,
know what?
Biden.
No, we're done, sir.
Antifa,
We're moving on to the
Antifa
next
es una
item.
organización comunista desde hace años, no es una idea, es una organización, tiene plata metida ahí.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas that are
Antifa is a
Antifa
dangerous
All right,
radical
gentlemen, we're
una
now moving on to the Trump
organización
and Biden records.
radical,
They'll overthrow
dice
you.
When a
Trump.
president, I'm going to ask a question. When the president seeks a second term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your
Vicepresidente
dad's
Biden,
sayings, which is, don't compare me to
no
the
com-
Almighty,
no me
compare me to
comparen-
the alternative. And in this case,
No me
sir,
comparen
you are
con
the
Dios, compárenme
alternative.
con la
Looking
alternativa.
at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters
¿Por qué los
elect you
votantes deberían
president
elegirlo como
over your
presidente
opponent?
sobre
In
su
this
oponente
segment,
en
President
este
Trump, you go
segmento?
first, 2 minutes.
Because there
¿Por
has
qué?
never been
Porque
an
nunca ha habido una
administration
administración o
or president who has
presidente
done more
que
than
ha
I've
hecho
done
más de
in a
lo que yo he
period of
hecho
3.5
en un
years.
periodo de
And that's
3 y medio
despite
años.
the impeachment
Y eso
hoax.
es
And you saw what
teniendo el
happened
tema
today
de
with Hillary
Rusia,
Clinton, where it was a whole big
con
con job. But
todo
despite
lo de
going
Hillary
through all
Clinton,
of these
teniendo en
things, where I had
cuenta
to fight
todo lo que ha
both
ocurrido,
flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an
no ha habido una
administration that's done
administración
what I've
que ha
done.
hecho más
The
de lo
greatest
que ha
before
hecho lo que yo he
COVID
hecho.
came in, the greatest economy
La
in
mejor
history,
economía
lowest
antes de COVID.
unemployment numbers. Everything was
La
good.
menor,
Everything was
el menor
going. And by the
desempleo.
way,
Todo iba muy
there
bien.
was unity going to happen.
Y había unidad.
People were calling me
Eso es
for
lo
the
que está
first time in
ocurriendo.
years. They were
Por
calling
primera vez en
and
años
they were saying
me estaban
it's time
llamando y
maybe.
que
And
era
then what happened?
hora
We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of
Era
the
hora de
military, including Space Force and
rehacer
all
la,
of the other
la,
things.
los mili-
A
la
fixing
milicia.
of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. It was a mess.
Estaba
And we
hablando
now
de-
got a
de la salud.
91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our
Ah,
vets.
bueno,
But
está
we've
hablando de los
rebuilt our
veteranos.
military. The
Y
job
ellos
that we've done,
re-
and I'll tell you
le,
something, some
le
people
dieron
say
más
maybe the
dinero a,
most
los
important.
militares.
By the end of the first term, I'll
Para el
have
final del
approximately
primer año,
300 federal
tuvo
judges and Court of Appeals judges,
más de
300,
300
and hopefully 3 great Supreme
jueces
Court judges,
federales.
justices. That is a record the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I'll have so many
So-
judges? Because President Obama and
Porque
him
pues,
left me 128 judges to fill.
Que el
When you leave
presidente Obama
office,
dejó
you don't leave any judges.
328
That's like you just don't do that. They left
28 jueces.
128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us
Usted se va
128 openings, you can't
y
be a
deja
good president. You can't be a good vice president.
puestos
But I want to
abiertos.
thank
Usted
you
no-
because it gives us
teniendo en cuenta eso,
almost, it'll
ustedes no
probably
ponen
be
ni un buen
above that
presidente ni
number
un-
by
ni
the
un buen
end of
líder.
this term.
Fine, sir.
300 judges. It's a record.
Looking at both your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump?
this
You have 2
president-
minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become
Bajo esta
weaker,
presidencia nos
sicker,
hemos vuelto más
poor,
débiles, más
more
enfermos,
divided,
más pobres,
more
más
violent.
divididos y más violentos.
When I was vice president,
Cuando yo era
we inherited a
vicepresidente,
recession. I
nosotros
was
tuvimos
asked to
una
fix it. I
recesión,
did. We left him a
nosotros la
booming
arreglamos
economy, and he
y tuvimos
caused a
una
recession.
economía
With regard to
en
being weaker,
creciente.
the fact is that I've gone head to head with Putin and made it
El
clear
hecho
to
es
him
que
we're not
yo
going to
he
take any of his
estado
stuff. He's Putin's
codo a
puppet.
codo
He
contra
still
Putin,
refuses to
en
even
cambio
say
Trump
anything
es
to
el,
Putin about the bounty on the heads
la
of
marioneta
American
de Putin.
soldiers.
Your son got
And-
$3.5
No.
million.
That's right. And by the way,
Mr.
my
President,
son,
wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
he never keeps his word. Can you add
No,
back
no,
Que nunca
no,
mantiene
I'm
su
not
palabra,
asking-
le dije.
that was a rhetorical question.
Can you
Go
add
ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yeah,
Because-
yes,
okay.
you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have
Somos
gotten
pobres, los billonarios
much more wealthy.
se han hecho
By
más
a tune
ricos,
of over $300 to $400 billion more.
3
Just
o
since
400
COVID,
billones de dólares
you
más
in the home,
desde
you
después
got
del COVID.
less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being
En términos
more
de-
violent, when we were in office, there
de
were
ser más violento.
15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about
Hablando
the
de mi hijo.
military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son
Mi
was
hijo
in Iraq.
estaba en
He spent a
Irak
year there.
durante más de un año.
He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser.
Él no era un
He was
perdedor.
a patriot.
Él era
And
un
the people left
patriota.
behind there were heroes.
Y la
And I
gente que
resent
estaba
my
allá eran
health.
héroes.
I'm talking about my son, Bo Biden. You're
I
talking
don't know.
about
I don't know Bo. I know Hunter.
Yeah,
Yo no
Hunter got
conozco a
thrown-
Bo.
Hunter got
Yo
thrown
conozco
out of the
a-
military. He
a
was
Hunter,
thrown out,
que lo
dishonorably
tumbaron,
discharged.
That's
lo
not true.
sacaron de los
years.
militares.
And he didn't have a
Está
job
hablando de
until you
Hunter.
became vice president.
Y que,
Once you
none
became
of that
el hijo
is
vice
true.
president,
Hunter
he made
solamente
a
tuvo un trabajo
fortune
hasta
in
que
Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is
Y
simply
solamente
not
tuvo-
true.
He
My
made a
son,
fortune.
my son,
solamente
didn't have a job.
ganó
son,
dinero
like a lot of people,
cuando
like a
hizo
lot of people
fortunas
we know
con
at home,
Rusia y con
had a
China.
drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's
Que mi
fixed
hijo ha
it.
tenido
He's
problemas
worked
con
on
la
it.
droga.
And I'm proud of him.
But why
I'm
was he
proud of
given
my
tens
son.
of millions
All
of
right.
But he
dollars?
wasn't
¿Por
given
qué le
tens
dieron
of
tantos
millions.
millones de
Tens
dólares?
of
Totally,
millions of
that's
dollars.
Que eso es
totally
falso, ese valor.
discredited.
We've already been through.
Totally discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial
So do I.
subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make
I know,
a
but when
judgment call
somebody
here.
gets $3.5 million
Okay, right.
from the
Let's
mayor
talk
of
about-
Está hablando de los
Moscow,
3 millones y medio que
Gentlemen,
tuvo el hijo de Biden de
It's
Moscú.
totally
Why did he get
discredited.
it?
I
Mitt
think,
Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers'
Gen-
money, that report. It was written for political reasons.
you know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would
Quiero
I.
hablar de
Okay.
cambio
Forest
climático.
fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of
Lo que está
acres.
ocurriendo en California es que
They
están
have
quemando los árboles
displaced
por allá.
hundreds
Pues
of
sí, porque hay gente
thousands
que
of
los está
people.
quemando. Eso
When
es,
state officials there blame
hay
the
gente que
fires
está
on climate
quemando
change, Mr. President, you
todos
said,
los
I
bosques de
don't think
California.
the science
Ellos están
knows.
pillando.
Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have
los
rolled
sacó
back a
Estados Unidos
number
del
of Obama
acuerdo de
environmental
París.
records. What do you believe
¿Qué
about the science of
piensa
climate
usted de la
change,
ciencia de
and
cambio
what will you
climático
do
y qué
in the
haría
next 4
usted
years
en los
to
próximos
confront it?
4 años
I
para
want
solucionarlo?
crystal clean water
Quiero
and air. I
agua
want beautiful, clean air. We have
cristalina
now
y
the
aire.
lowest carbon. If you look at
Ten-
our numbers right
si
now,
usted ve nuestros
we are
números,
doing phenomenally.
nos
But
está
I haven't
yendo
destroyed our
muy bien,
businesses. Our businesses aren't
pero
put out of commission.
nuestros
If you look at the Paris
empresas
Accord, it was a disaster
están
from our
destruidas, nuestras
standpoint. And
empresas.
people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires
Nuestras
are
empresas nos
concerned,
está yendo
you need forest management in addition to everything else. The
bien.
forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns
Usted
down. You've got to have
tira un
forest
What do
management.
cigarrillo,
you
You've got to have
believe?
cuts.
What do you
tira un
believe about the
cigarrillo,
science of climate
se va a
change?
quemar todo el
I
bosque
believe
teniendo
that
en
we
cuenta
have to do everything
que
we
habían
can to have
hojas
immaculate
secas
air, immaculate water, and do whatever else
y
we can
plantas
that's good. You
secas
know,
ahí.
we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very
Do you
exciting for a
believe
lot of people.
that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of
I
this
think a
Que las
lot
planet?
of
emisiones
things
de
do, but I
gas
think to an extent,
contribuyen a...
yes. I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every
contribuyen
year,
al cambio
I get the
climático.
call, California's burning. California's
California se está
burning.
quemando, sí,
If
es
that was
impresionante.
cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest
Si
management,
hubiera
you
buen
wouldn't be
manejo
getting those
del
calls.
bosque,
You know, in
no
Europe, they live their
habrían esos
forest cities. They're
problemas.
called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the
Está
governor about it. I'm getting
comparando
along very well with
otra
the
ciudad
governor.
con
But I said,
California
at some point,
y que
you can't
California
every
no le
year
debería
have
estar yendo tan
hundreds of
mal como otras
thousands of
ciudades.
acres of land just burned to the ground.
Y
That's
California
burning
se está
down because of
quemando,
a
están
lack
volviendo
of
But sir, if
miércoles.
you believe in
Lo
the
que
science
pareciera que
of
está pasando
climate
sí, que hay
change,
gente que está
why
quemando
have you
esos
rolled back the
bosques.
Obama
Pareciera que hay gente que los
Clean
está
Power
quemando. Por eso le
Plan,
está
which
yendo tan mal
limited
a California,
carbon
también
emissions in power plants?
regido
Why
por
have you
demócratas.
relaxed?
because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars
Well,
and
not
trucks?
really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by
But in the case of
$3,500.
California, they've simply
No, but you
ignored
would take a lot of cars
rollback.
off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how
Están
that
hablando de
turns out.
cómo
A
mejorar
lot
el
of
tema
people
del
agree with
dióxido
me.
de
Many
carbono por los
people.
carros.
The car has gotten so expensive because
Que
they
los
have
carros se han vuelto
computers all
tan
over the
caros.
place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And, and I'm okay with electric cars too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric
Está a
cars.
favor de los
But
carros
what they've done
eléctricos,
in
pero lo
California
que
is
están
just
haciendo en
crazy.
California
Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond
sí es más
to
bien
the
aumentar
president's
impuestos a las
climate
personas que no tienen
change
carros
record, but I also
eléctricos.
want to ask you
Entonces
about the bill. Sir,
desincentivan
you
como tal
proposed $2 trillion
el
in
transporte, en vez de
green
permitir a las personas
jobs.
que
You
compren
talk about
mejores carros.
new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy that, in fact, is going to provide for the ability us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they, in fact, are weatherized in a way that, in fact, they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good-paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that, in fact, is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the
Aunque
Paris
se salió
Accord
el
because
acuerdo
with
de
us
París,
out of it, look what's happening.
Biden se
It's
volvería a
all
meter al acuerdo de
falling
París.
apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States.
Están hablando de
Instead
emisiones de
of doing something
carbono
about that, I would be
que logran
gathering up and making
los
sure we had
bosques,
the
los
countries of
bosques
the
de
world coming up
Brasil.
with $20 billion and say, here's $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
Sí,
What
es
about
como
the
cómo hacen
argument
para
then that
mantener
President
los
Trump basically
bosques
says that you have
en
to
Brasil y que si
balance
no los mantienen entonces ahora
environmental
mismo
interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line?
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, makes sure that he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is the guy who says that, well, the fact that it's all true. And here's the deal.
He's talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about
where they want to rip down buildings
Go for a minute, and then you can go.
and rebuild the building.
No,
It's the
that is
dumbest,
not-
most
that is
ridiculous.
not
Where
the
airplanes are out of
Wait a minute, sir.
business, where two-car systems are out, where they
Not
want to
true.
take out the cows too.
Not
That's not
true.
true either, right?
Not
This is
true.
this is a 100
Simply,
trillion.
look,
That's more money than
that
our
is-
country could make in
that is
100
simply
years if we're
not
going.
the case.
All right, let me
destroy our
because I
country.
actually, wait a minute, sir. I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy-efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I think some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good-paying jobs.
But let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that.
$100 billion.
The fact is, it's going to create millions of good-paying jobs, and these tax incentives for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of. It's going to make the economy much safer. Look how much we're paying now to deal with the hurricanes. By the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. They may.
I never said that.
That's
at all.
he did say.
You made it up.
And here's the deal.
You make up a
we are going to be in a position where we can create hard, good jobs by making sure the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars on floods, hurricanes, rising seas. We're in real trouble. Look what's happened just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections and counties in Iowa. They didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem. We, in fact, but the rest of the world, we've got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
All right, gentlemen,
Wait a minute, Chris. So why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice
Sí.
president. Why didn't you get the world? China
¿Por qué no
sends up real dirt into
Biden
the air.
estaba
Russia
diciendo todas
does,
las
India
propuestas?
does, they all do.
Y
We're
esas
supposed
propuestas,
to be
¿por qué
good.
no
And
las
by the
hizo
way,
durante los
he
47
made
años
a
que
couple
estuvo
of
como
statements.
en el
The Green New
gobierno?
Deal is $100 trillion.
That is
not
not
20
my
billion.
plan.
That's
The Green
well,
New
you want to
Deal
rebuild every
is not
building.
my plan.
I want to
All right,
rebuild
all right.
every
If he knew
you have to-
anything
wait, no,
about,
no, wait.
if he
Gentlemen?
knew
He
anything
made a
about,
statement
Gentlemen?
about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay.
That is
What
not
he
true.
did
Sir,
is he
you're done in
said
this segment.
he called
Mr.
the
Vice-
military
Mr. Vice President,
stupid bastards.
I
and he
did
said
not
it on
say
tape.
that.
He said
Mr.
stupid
Please,
bastards. He
sir,
said it.
stop.
I would never
I
say
would
that
Play
to the
it.
military.
Play it.
Go ahead.
You're
Mr.
on
Vice
tape.
President answered his final question.
The final question is, I can't remember which of all his rantings.
I'm having a little trouble myself. But and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the
the-
idea of what your
the
environmental
Green New
changes
Deal-
will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
So do you
We're going to
support
build
the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
You support them?
No, I don't support the Green
Oh,
New Deal.
you don't? Oh, well, that's a
You
big
let-
statement.
I
That
support
means you
the
just
Biden.
lost the radical left. Gone.
I support
you
the
don't.
Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment, election integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How
Vamos a
confident
hablar de las
should we
balotas
be
súper
that this will be
importantes,
a fair election? And what are you
teniendo en
prepared
cuenta
to
que hace
do
poquito encontraron
over the
una gente
next
que
5+
estaba pagando
weeks?
plata
Because it'll
por
not only
firmar
be
eso
election day,
desde
but
200
also
hasta 800
counting some
dólares
ballots, mail-in ballots after election day. What are you
para que
prepared to
voten
do to reassure the American people that the
por la
next
izquierda.
president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
Prepared to let people vote. They should go to iwillvote.com. Decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own
Se supone que ahora la
Homeland
gente tiene la
Security
oportunidad de
Director,
elegir
and as
cómo
well as
puede
the
votar.
FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not, when the votes are counted, and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, that'll be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand you have it in your control to determine what this country is going to look like the next 4 years. Is it going to change, or you get 4 more years of these lies?
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition, because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won, and even
Sí,
before
es
I
que
won,
no
from the day I
intentaron
came down the
espiar.
escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that, because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a newspaper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well, because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months, because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major
Después de
states with
7
that.
días
All
pueden
run by
descubrir.
Democrats.
2 minutes.
All run by
Después de
Democrats.
7
It's
días
President
pueden
Trump,
saber quién fue
You're
presidente.
going to be able to
Imagínense
continue.
problema.
been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so. Because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them, we don't like them, we don't like them.
But what
They
are you
throw
going to
them
do
out
about it?
left
If there
and
are
right.
millions of ballots going out
What
right
you
now,
do
what
is
are
you
gonna
go
do?
and vote. You do a solicited ballot,
No,
and that's
I
okay,
know
or
your
you go and
complaint.
vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people
You go
have
and vote. You go and vote.
but
like
what I'm
they,
saying is, what are
like
you
they
gonna do
used
about
to
the
in
fact
the
that
old.
millions of people?
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia. Mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in
Están
rivers. This is a
vendiendo las
horrible thing for our
balotas
country.
de
This is
votación.
not.
There is no
This is
evidence
not
of
going to
that.
end well.
There is
Okay.
no
Precisamente como
This is not
excusa
going
cogiendo el
to
President
COVID.
Biden-
Five states
fact,
have had
go ahead,
mail-in
sir.
ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home. What they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by by election day. If it doesn't get in till the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes because he knows
You're
the
wrong.
outcome.
You're wrong.
No, I want to continue with you on
I
this,
love
Vice
counting the
President
votes.
Biden.
Chris, he's so wrong when he makes
in
a
fact,
statement
no,
like that.
excuse me, Vice President Biden, the biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out or there is some
El
other
problema
irregularity or
de
they
esas
missed the deadline. So the question I have is,
por mail
are you
es que las
concerned
votan
that the Supreme
precisamente
Court
porque
with a
no
Justice
fueron
Barrett
llenadas
will
correctamente.
settle any dispute?
I'm
Ese es el
concerned
verdadero
that any
problema.
court would settle this because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you. That is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me, Chris, when you
I
have
a final-
80 million ballots
Gentlemen, I have a final
sending
question.
and swamping the system, you know it can't be done. You know it can't.
Más de
And already
80
there's been
So now-
millones
Mail
decided-
service.
de valor
Wait a minute, gentlemen.
de una forma
Final
ordenada
question
y
is,
ese promedio no se va a
in
poder
8
lograr.
states, we can keep talking.
It's
In
a
8 states,
disgrace.
election workers are prohibited, currently by law, 8 states, from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and
Yes.
flatten them until Election Day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could
Que
be
puede durar
weeks,
días o
until we
semanas para
find out who
saber quién fue el que
the new
ganó
president is. So
como
first for you,
presidente
sir,
con esa vaina de
finally
mail-in voting.
for the vice
Es
president, I hope
ridículo.
neither of you will interrupt
Y
the
eso lo están
other.
haciendo en Estados Unidos,
Will you
primer
urge
mundo.
your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest? And will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you
I'm
go first.
urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair
You're urging
election,
them what?
I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And
No,
I'll tell
sí,
you what,
does that
from a
mean?
common
Does
Si
that
sense,
empieza a
mean
haber como
you're gonna
problemas en las
be able to take
it
votaciones,
means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out
¿Quién
80
estaría
million
dispuesto a
ballots.
aceptar
They're not
esos
equipped to.
problemas con los votantes?
These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two,
Okay.
they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste
Han
paper
encontrado
basket 3
balotas
days ago,
en la
and they all
basura.
had the name military ballots. They were military. They all
Eran
had the name
balotas
Trump on them.
militares.
Vice President
Balotas
that's
que
Biden,
good?
tenían el nombre
Vice
de
President
Trump.
Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes, and here's the deal. They count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until Election Day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since at the end of the Civil War, in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots, that somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established.
Take
Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's race.
I
in
asked
Manhattan.
you had an opportunity
Look
to
at
respond.
Carolyn Monroe.
Go ahead.
They have no idea what
Vice
happened.
President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome. And I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I want to
if in
see an
fact,
honest
Okay.
ballot count.
Gentlemen,
We-
you say that's the end of
Chris,
it? This is
I
the end
wanna
of this
see an
debate?
honest ballot count.
No dejaron
I
responder
think
a
he
Donald
does
Trump.
too.
No dejaron responder a
To
Donald
be continued as in more debates as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, it's been an interesting hour and a half. I want to thank you both for participating in the first of 3 debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic for hosting this event. The next debate, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates, will be 1 week from tomorrow, October 7th, at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. The 2 vice presidential nominees, Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris, will debate at 9 p.m. Eastern that night. We hope you watch. Until then, thank you and good night. Thank you.
Esto fue un enredo muy bien. Un enredo. Se estaban hablando uno sobre el otro y eso no se entendía. Ay, Melania llegó a saludar. Papito. Papito, ¿cómo le fue?